Hello and welcome to this very special show on NDTV, Lit Storming, with two brilliant authors, Shashi Tharoor and Chetan Bhagat, joining me. They've got so many things which are not common. In fact, they're different in so many ways, completely different styles, but they have this one commonality. They say it like it is. Thanks so much, Shashi Tharoor and Chetan Bhagat, for being with me on this show. Of course, it's World Dictionary Day as well, so that's another interesting aspect. Shashi, many say that you're a walking dictionary, so is it nice being on television today?
Yes, actually, World Dictionary Day was something I didn't even know existed until a few years ago when a media outlet came and cornered me on that occasion. And now that I have a Tharoorosaurus out, I suppose I actually have a special affinity for the day.
Chetan, so this is the first time that Shashi Tharoor and you are both actually interacting on television together. So it's nice that an article of yours, in a way, brought out the areas that both of you have in common, or brought out at least one area that you agreed on.
Yes, I mean, it's what you say matters, not the language. And although we both speak the same language, but I think we would all agree in India there are two kinds of English. One is the Chetan Bhagat English and one is the Shashi Tharoor English. So they can feel like very different sometimes. But yeah, what we both agree on, I think, is we want a rich, prosperous and harmonious India, and that remains the same in whatever language or whatever choice of words you use.
I think that's actually a very interesting point you made, Chetan Bhagat. I'd like to bring Shashi Tharoor in on that, and you as well, because when you talked about Chetan Bhagat English and Shashi Tharoor English, some would say that it also becomes about what people call two different Indias, that, there's a intellectual elite, a St. Stephen's going college, which is something which has been edged out by a new India, and a new different kind of Indians who don't think how you speak English or the accent you speak is important. But what you're saying is that you agree on the core values of India. Shashi, would you like to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I am a little wary of all these easy dismissals of elitism. I mean, I think Chetan went to an IIT, worked for a multinational bank in Hong Kong. I'm not sure who's elite, him or the guy who's wearing a munda and trudging through the fields of Thiruvananthapuram in the heat to win a popular mandate to contest an election 3 times over. So, I mean, frankly, elitism is a challenging concept. But I would argue that, in fact, in many ways, if you can see exactly what we're talking about here, we're talking about certain values and ideals which can be expressed in different words. Mm-hmm. In the case of Chetan, he's actually expressing them, I would say, in an English which is accessible. He will himself tell you that I reviewed one of his very early books in a very complimentary manner in an American publication, urging people to understand that this is somebody who was speaking to the aspirational youth of small town India. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very significant audience for him to reach, whereas you're right, my books were targeting a slightly more educated, if you like, cosmopolitan sensibility. But that doesn't make either of them invalid. I think India is large, it contains multitudes, and it should have room for both sets of approaches, provided, as Chetan says, we agree on the core values, and we want a united, prosperous, safe, secure, and flourishing India, which works for every Indian, not just an elite and not just a minority.
Chetan, come in, because sometimes reverse snobbery almost seems that it's in vogue now, because if your accent is a certain way, then you're dismissed, that you're not a son of the soil. Shashi, in his very urbane, suave style, has put out that he's the guy who's actually out there in the trenches winning elections.
No, yeah, he also went to St. Stephen's, and that's like, way more. Okay, but that's.
So did I, Chetan. I think, so we are two stiff Indians against IIT
okay,
and IIM.
I'm not fighting this battle then. So, peace. I come in peace. So the point is, I think if I didn't agree with what fundamentally Shashi was saying, I would not be engaging with him or like him as much as I do. And I think only small-minded people or only shallow people go a lot by words and accents and things like that. Somebody, if someone makes sense, these just make sense. And I think that's what we agree on. Shashi, of course, belongs to the Congress, so he has to, he has to fit into the party line as well as his own thing. But honestly, I relate to Shashi, the author, more than Shashi, the politician. And there is no doubt that he works damn hard. In fact, that is one of my questions to him, that how despite being a pretty active politician. He's not like a passive politician, like some movie star who became a politician and then just chills out. He's a pretty active politician, very much engaged in the community. How does he manage to write despite doing that?
And 21 books.
And
so
books after books, yeah. Like,
exactly.
I mean, seriously, the output is prolific, man.
So which is your daytime job or your full-time job, Shashi? Do you see yourself as a politician or as an author?
Well, politics has brought with it certain responsibilities. I'm accountable to the 2 million residents of Thiruvananthapuram who have voted for me and put me here. So they get first claim on my time, which is why, in fact, most days my writing starts after 11 p.m. when the last political call or message or request has been dealt with. That's when I can allow myself some me time to think in terms of what I want to write about. It doesn't often, therefore, always qualify as perhaps a principal activity. Though when the Lok Sabha websites wishes to list a profession, they unwisely, without consulting me, listed me as a diplomat. And I said, take it off. List me as a writer, because in as much as I have a profession beyond politics, it is writing. I'm already an ex-minister. One day I'll be an ex-MP, but I intend never to be an ex-writer.
In fact, I wanted to ask, picking up on what Chetan said, that you have to follow the party line. What's interesting, Shashi, is that you're called so many different things. You're called a dissenter by some. You're called somebody who never toes the party line, which is why, ironically, despite your wonderful acquaintance, much more than acquaintance, your wonderful passion for the English language, you're still not an official spokesperson of the Congress party. And Chetan, you're often called a bhakt. So between a dissenter and a bhakt, what truly describes either of you? Chetan, do you want to go first as a bhakt?
Have you seen the 12,700 troll abusive comments because I said that what is wrong in this Tanishq ad? How am I a bhakt? I mean, so I mean, 12,700 people have the time in this country. Just imagine how amazing life must be in our country, that despite a 24% GDP contraction, despite Corona, despite so many other problems and difficulty, people have the time to go troll an author and tell him how horrible he is because he said he liked an ad.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I'm a bhakt. People who say that, they often find it difficult to, are the same people who try to maybe classify Shashi. What I meant is he has to obviously be somewhat in line with Congress. There is nothing, I mean, that's the whole point of being in the Congress, that he agrees with them somewhat. But I think people often have a problem placing Shashi and me because we are writers and we have independent opinions on certain things. Mm-hmm. And people find it much easier to slot people permanently. Like if I say Sonia is anti-BJP, now I don't have to every time listen to what you say or anything. I can just tell my brain to think that about you. Whereas if I really want to apply myself, I should see what Sonia is saying and then see whether she makes sense or not. She doesn't have a fixed bias. If something is sensible to her, she says it. So I think Shashi and I belong to that category. Unfortunately, I feel Shashi is not valued by the Congress as much as he should be. But then who is?
Shashi?
I'm not going to go there, Chetan. All I can say is that...
I know. See, this is where, and it's perfectly understandable. It's a very honorable thing to do. This is where he has to kind of align his views with that of and he has to take his party along with it. But yeah, I do feel like, there could be a lot more done here.
Shashi, go ahead.
I don't see myself as a dissident at all, Sonia, because, I came into politics rather late in life with not just a fully formed set of views and values and beliefs, but with a very long paper trail. It was going to be very difficult to disavow my decades of writing and speaking about liberal values, about the pluralism of India, about my vision of what India is all about. I published books on Indian politics without being in Indian politics. I published books on Indian history. I published a biography of Nehru. I have all these ideas and contributions that I'm not going to disavow because I've suddenly joined politics. So I joined the Congress party because I largely agree with what it stands for. Now, once in a while, if we don't see things eye to eye, I can always stay silent, and very often I prefer to do that rather than to needlessly divide opinions within my party. Mm-hmm. If once in a while something I say is either misunderstood or not appreciated, that's part of the price I pay for being an individual with my own mind. I've always said to any Congress leaders who had any problem with these things. And listen, if all you want is a rubber stamp, then you don't need me. I mean, the fact is that when you asked me to come into politics, presumably what you wanted was me with my ideas, my abilities, my talents, such as they are, and my vision and my ability to put them across. Some of the criticism has also been, frankly, a bit ignorant. When I said, for example, that before the 2019 elections, that I was fighting to ensure that my country didn't become a Hindu Pakistan. Yeah. I was astonished to see a young spokesman of the Congress party very sort of disapprovingly saying, oh, our leaders should choose their words more carefully. Well, young man, those were words chosen by Jawaharlal Nehru. It was his phrase that I don't want India to become a Hindu Pakistan. And I, in my overeducated way, assumed that every congressman was schooled in these things and knew that. Very clearly, some don't. So it is sometimes a challenge, but I also feel the media loves to inflate these things, make a bigger controversy out of a small misunderstanding, and thereby create all this label of dissident. I'm not a dissident. If I were a dissident, I wouldn't be in the Congress. I'm in the Congress because I really believe it's a best alternative to the government, whose follies have been documented amply, including lately by Chetan. And as for these labels, I think they deny the individuality of the person. I think Chetan is very right to resent being pigeonholed. He has been very, very, I would even say, uncritical of the government at certain moments, but he's also told it like it is at other moments. And I think when I've endorsed Chetan's views on Twitter, it's been because I agreed with what he said. I don't have to, I don't have to sort of suck up to Chetan, and nor does he need to suck up to me. I hope that when we express appreciation of each other, it's genuinely because we agree with what the other person said. And to have the freedom to do that is what I hope individual politicians and writers will always share.
Right. But of course, individuality in political parties, that's a whole separate debate. But Chetan, so when Shashi said that he retweeted your column or commented on it because he liked it, the tweet he came out with was special as well, because you said, I don't want just a simple like or just a simple comment, Shashi, I want a Shashi style. So did you understand what he tweeted when he first did? I have to say, I don't completely.
Well, firstly, I'm not going to get praise every day, right? It's not a daily thing. It's a rare thing. And then it is coming from Shashi. Then might as well make it memorable and make it count, make it something I'm actually going to print it on a big A3 paper and frame it, the tweet, because I thought, let's make it a day to remember. I also genuinely wanted to remind people on Twitter that you can use this medium positively. You can have fun with it. You can actually talk about things. We can make a laugh. We can have a laugh. We can agree. We can disagree. We can, we don't need to be as nasty as some of the people are. And I think when someone like Shashi does something fun, I do something fun, there is a messaging there. So I think it was that. But what he said to me, although many people have tried to explain those words to me, and I have a list of that, but Google Translate couldn't do it.
Shashi, are you going to do a Shashi Translate?
He couldn't do it.
No, thanks. I think Chetan was a very good sport in that, because he just got into the spirit of it. And I must say that for me, this whole business of my using big words has become a bit of a joke. I've begun to take it as a joke, because the truth is, I don't actually use I don't use perhaps as simple language as Chetan does, but I do use language in order to communicate, whether it's to tell a story, make an argument, convince an audience. It would make no sense to use words that the bulk of people don't understand. But this reputation got stuck to me because of one tweet in which I denounced a certain vicious news anchor as having issued a farrago of misrepresentations, distortions, and lies, words to that effect. And suddenly, the Oxford English Dictionary, no less, tweeted that they'd had 1 million Indians searching for the meaning of farrago and what accounted for this. And from there, this became, people even opened parody accounts calling themselves Mr. Farrago and so on. So then I said, well, all right, this is what I'm going to be accused of, may as well capitalize on it. So a few months later, when a certain chief minister who'd been elected as an ally of the Congress jumped ship and went to the other side, I just decided to take the mickey out of him by not naming him. So I say, word of the day, snollygoster, meaning a shrewd, unprincipled politician. First usage, USA 1845. Most recent usage today. And I didn't need to name anybody. I didn't need to talk about it. The word alone was able to make my point. And that then became a running gag, so that, for example, when I launched my book, The Paradoxical Prime Minister, I issued a tweet saying that my new book is more than just a 500-page exercise in floxy-nosy nihilipilification,
Oh,
which
God.
means the act of estimating someone as worthless. So I was trying to say, look, read my book, because I'm not just saying the Prime Minister is worthless. It's a more complex analysis than that, so please read it. But by using a word like that, I got people talking about the word and thereby talking about the book. So it just became a bit of a running joke that I'm happy to extend, thanks to Chetan's willingness to play along.
No,
Well,
absolutely.
not just me. I mean, there's a book called Tharurosaurus. I mean, it's not just me. I mean,
I
you are
have it
making
right
it
here.
official. You're publishing a book called Tharurosaurus, or what a tongue twister that is. So
No,
I think
but let me actually just point out, Shashi, it's interesting because you just talked about that Farrago, because right now we're going through the same Farragos now. I mean, I'm sure you're very happy that it's moved away from you, but we now find that there's a Farrago every prime time, in a sense, that in the world we're living in terms of on television seems to be on even crazier Farragos, actually pointing to what Chetan's column said, that get off your phones, stop watching this kind of rubbish and look at what's actually happening around us. Do you think the Farragos have dispelled at all or are getting worse?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think that it's really shameful what this individual and the wannabe imitators on a couple of other channels have done to the nature of the Indian public conversation, as well as the standards of television and of public discourse. I mean, media trials have been commented upon adversely by various high courts. He cheerfully ignores them. After he manufactured lies about me and incidents that had never occurred and that he claimed to have evidence of, which was impossible because it never happened, I sued him. I sued him because even though I had been advised by everybody in politics, don't bother to sue for defamation, you'll never get justice and people move on to the next defamation, so don't bother. And therefore, for some years, I didn't take any legal action. Finally, something snapped and I sued him. The case is dragging on for years. But the last hearing, the judges urged him to control himself and to stop behaving in such an intemperate way. And he once again ignored them. So you've got to a situation now where people are able not just to defame with impunity, but to disregard the strictures
Right, and in fact, I'm
imposed
taking
by
it
the
beyond an
judiciary.
individual in this case, because I don't want to. I'm taking it beyond.
No, I know. And in
Yes.
this particular case, in any case, this individual has a couple of wannabes. So there are at least 3 channels at any given time. But in this particular incident, this is exactly what happened. Let me take a dissimilar situation, because this is still sub judice. And for that matter, my own problems are still sub judice. But I'll take a different issue. Do you remember a few years ago when there was this whole controversy about Indian students allegedly being beaten up in Australia? Now, the Australians had a totally different explanation for what was happening. But this gentleman and this channel went overboard, alleging that there was an essential racist sort of gunning for Indians approach in Australia. And your channel and one other channel reported it much more moderately, with views from both sides and the Australian government's explanations about some Indian students working illegally after dark and being
Right.
out there for unsalubrious hours and so on. So I remember when this gentleman came to interview me, I was actually in the Ministry of External Affairs at the time, frothing at the mouth about this. And then in those days, there was still tape. So when the tape ran out, he had to pause in order to have his cameraman load in a new tape. So during the thing, he was completely relaxed and chatty during the tape change. And I said, listen, do you really believe everything you're saying? And he said, who cares what I believe? I'm playing the story this way. I have a 45% in the TRPs. NDTV and India Today are playing it as responsible statesmanlike, and they have 11 and 13%. I rest my case. And then the tape was put in and he started frothing again. So there is a certain cynicism that you will exploit somebody's death, you will cause people grief, you will accuse them falsely of crimes they haven't committed. All of this just in order to raise your ephemeral, transient TRPs.
No,
I mean,
but
it is the
exactly what you're
equivalent of
saying is that
selling your
what I think
soul.
the
It's
TRP
sad.
scam has exposed, not just about one channel, I think about the larger thing, but Chetan, come in on that, because I think what Shashi started with, at the end of conversation, the end of dialogue, the end of the belief that while you may have different views on some aspects, that you may agree on certain other things, and you don't have to be adversaries or enemies or sworn to shout at each other every time you actually have a dialogue. The whole TRP racket, the larger kind of discourse that we're currently seeing around us, what's happening to that India, the argumentative Indian, as Amartya Sen once wrote, he could never have imagined what it would have come to today.
Yeah. Firstly, I think even the TRPs now are under doubt. But I'm not surprised, because if fake news is okay, then fake TRPs also is just a part of the same thing. I think, Sonia, what we had long past left the ethics of truth and fact-based journalism, that had been crossed. In fact, I'm kind of like, okay, there's no point even talking about it. That ship has sailed long back. Fake news, like the Australia one, Shashi gave an idea. Example
don't
of,
say that, Chetan. We don't say that.
But it has. But it has, Sonia.
We are
If
still
I
some
tell you-
idealists in the profession.
Yes, but if I say to you right now, I saw a UFO in the sky, I saw aliens in my street. Okay, it's fake news, but it's interesting. You might even not you, but I'm just saying the media might run it. So then, where is the what else has happened? Another line has been crossed now, which I think is very bad. Which is innocent people will be harmed to sell fake news. It's one thing to do loony news. Okay, there's a rebirth, or there's some UFO sighting, or there's some alien, which is fake. But okay, there's no harm as such. But then when you need a target, a gladiator target, someone must be harmed, someone must suffer to draw the audience in more, whether it's an actress or it's somebody else. That is where I think things are going really out of control. Because literally innocent people, whether it was the Tablighi Jamaat, which the court also later said that this was unfair, you need somebody to get hurt. And I think that line is, when you see that line, just giving fake news seems like almost gentle. I mean, okay, it's just fake news.
No, absolutely. That's a very important point, that you're actually making villains out of certain, whether it's a community, whether it's a young actress, whether it's somebody else, and who then actually compensates.
Whether it's entire Bollywood, whether it's a company.
For what to lose. And the worrying thing is that
yeah.
once you lose credibility of news television, when news becomes entertainment, you see other places taking over, like WhatsApp takes over for a source of news. In fact, I'm sure many of us know people who look at WhatsApp as their main source of news. They'll believe it because they saw it on YouTube, or they'll believe it from anybody can say anything, and that's seen as verified news. Do you think that's a huge issue now? You talk about attacks that you face. Is it often based on what's out there on WhatsApp or on the internet?
Are you referring to me or to Chetan? Sorry.
Well, to
Yeah,
both
Shashi,
of you,
take that.
actually. To both of you.
Shashi can take
Well,
it.
I mean, I have to open my timeline daily on social media and find, as Chetan mentioned, the 12,700 trolls he has. I probably have 12,07,000 trolls who have swallowed or choose to believe the lies of people like the individual we were talking about, who routinely call me a murderer and all sorts of awful things. Because presumably, apart from their politics, which they clearly despise mine, they have managed to persuade themselves that I am all these things that not even the police have ever alleged, or anyone else anyone, including her own children and brothers, have ever alleged that I ever have done. So, I've got this problem as being in public life, that there is an image, if you like, that your enemies also contribute to building up as much as your own work. I mean, I would like to be judged by what I have written, what I have done for my constituents and for the Indian people, the things I've said, the stands I have taken. Everyone wants to be ultimately the owner, as it were, of their own image. But when you're in public life and you're unfairly trolled, victimized, traduced, then you end up also discovering that there are all sorts of false beliefs about you, which have been engendered maliciously by people for their own agendas, their own TRPs or whatever else. And that too becomes, unfortunately, part of what you are publicly. When strangers Google you, they find that along with this. So it is hard and painful. And I really feel for that young girl in Bombay, and I feel very sad for the very many other victims of an unprincipled media. We've come a long way from World Dictionary Day, Sonia, but since you raised the question, yeah, I'm afraid that is really a problem.
Well, a dictionary in a sense has words or answers for everything, but just to ask also, because we're talking that the importance we are giving, and when we talk about words in social, the importance we are giving now to social media and the impact. I mean, we've seen what happened this week with the Tanishq ad being actually withdrawn, with apologies for being secular. Being put out by stores, and we're seeing that even after, it's kind of got a life of its own, even after the ad has been withdrawn by one of our biggest corporate brands, that you still see stray protests happening. In a sense, it's a social media generated phenomena, which even India's biggest corporates are bound to. How real is this threat, Chetan, do you think? And why is it that we don't seem to be able to stand up to it? Or as I said, I mean, you would think that India's biggest corporate, a brand backed by the Tatas, would be able to stand up to online trolls.
Actually, that is what disappointed me even more, because this is not just it is not like a one jewelry shop somewhere which is like, if there is this is the Tata Group. I mean, they own everything from Range Rover to Tata Trucks to salt to jewelry, and this is one of the most prominent, respected groups in the country. And if they could not handle this, that was very disappointing. Maybe they took a call because they have like a precious items in their stores, diamonds, gold, and they didn't want like a couple of the losses could be huge. But they could have kept the ad because frankly there was nothing wrong with the ad. I mean, there are ads which are sometimes offend people. I saw the ad many times over. I couldn't see anything from any prism, any lens. As an Indian ad, it was a nice ad. I mean, and the fact that they had to do this, it's harmful. It's harmful for the economic development of the country because new companies that come here, people who are doing business in India, they feel nervous. This is what businesses assess as political risk, social risks, and that has an impact on our growth and on our jobs. And it's not all Hindus who feel this way.
No,
I mean,
absolutely. So
obviously not. Obviously not.
In fact, Shashi, that's what I want to bring you in on, because in a sense now, it's one thing when you see political parties setting agendas, but on this almost seems to be amorphous. I mean, there will be claims that is this about hate politics, but the larger bit being that a group of people coming together, even if some are politically affiliated, can actually make a brand like this bow down. And the larger aspect that somehow being secularism, which is in the preamble of our constitution, is almost a word that a brand is ashamed to be associated with today, an interfaith
That's
marriage.
Right. In fact, disgracefully, a Tanishq store owner in Gujarat actually put a sign on his door saying that he apologized for his own company's quote-unquote shameful ad. If I were Mr. Tata, I would fire him overnight. But apparently what has happened is when you speak about a group of people coming together, it wasn't just their tweets and posts on social media that intimidated the company. It was apparently threats to the safety of their employees and the employees' families. And, Gundas, if they're allowed to have their way in our country, what at the end of the day will our country and its democracy be worth? We have to be a country where people can say what they believe in. Others can be free to disagree. You can express your views and biases, but you can't threaten people. And that apparently is what happened. And that's why apparently the Tatas decided that discretion was the better part of valor. I still think it was shameful. And for one of their own employees, one of their own stores to call their own ad shameful and disavow it was even more contemptible. But what is even more ironic in all of this, which Chetan probably knows but hasn't yet mentioned, is that Tanishq as an advertising strategy has been trying to depict itself as a brand with a difference that caters to different clientele. It's trying to encourage younger people to break away from the traditional conservative family jeweler their parents and grandparents went to and strike out afresh. That's why, for example, they had ads earlier promoting remarriage of divorced couples, where the bride has a little son with her. There was an ad like that. There are ads embracing the LGBTQ community. So they were always this very bold company. Now, this actually is a relatively unbold thing to do. There are lots and lots of interfaith marriages in our country. 5% of marriages in our country are either interfaith or intercaste. Why on earth did they back away from this when they had the courage to stick to those other ads? I find that they have actually betrayed their brand.
No,
and speaking for myself, it makes me less inclined to ever patronize Tanishq. Not that I'm buying much jewelry for anybody, but if I wanted to, because I really feel they lack the courage of their convictions. I think what they did was shameful, and those who made them do it through their intimidation and threatened gundagiri are even more shameful.
No, and standing up to bullies also, I think, an important point, because we see so many individuals do that every day. So at the risk of whether it's young student leaders, whether it's people online, whether it's young actors, also the question of standing up to online bullies. But finally, as we are ending this special show, Shashi, you talked about World Dictionary Day. What's the one word you'd like to use to describe the current political climate in India? What's happening in India today? And I actually maybe take out political, but the current social, political, everything. What's the one word you'd like to use?
A very simple word: dismay. I feel dismayed. I feel distressed. I really feel that we are plumbing new lows each day in almost every way, whether it's the way in which we're dealing with COVID, the way in which we're dealing with our social lack of cohesion, the way in which we're dealing with the border situation with China. You go up and down, there seems to be nothing but reasons for dismay all around. So I would say the current situation in India, sadly, is dismay.
Chetan, what's the one word you'd like to use?
It's bad.
Sorry?
Bad. It's bad.
There you are. That's the difference between Chetan and me when it comes to
It's just that I'm just being as simple as possible. It's not good. I mean, you know, I'm trying to explain to people, it's not good.
Shashi, you're going with dismay now. I expected a little bit better than that from somebody who's come up with also Zug Zwang.
This is reputation now.
Zug Zwang is one of your
Well, you
words,
know,
Shashi,
the
so I
thing
want a
about
better word
Zugzwang
than dismay.
Zugzwang is a chess term coming from German, but used in English, which refers to when you're forced to make a move that will result in your own capitulation, your own defeat. Because in chess, you can't pass. You know, in some card games, others you can pass your turn. In chess, you have to play. And when you play and you're basically putting your king in jeopardy, that's a Zugzwang. Now, in those situations, you can say they lock themselves into a failure. But why has our government taken steps, or why is our society in the process of taking steps that are guaranteeing our own failure? The column of Chetan's that I praise is making this point that we are doing ourselves a disservice. We have so many things we can do, we're capable of doing, that we should be achieving. Why are we wasting time dividing ourselves in this pathetic way? That's one of the reasons for my dismay, and I think Chetan shares that.
Well, maybe I should focus on the other word you explained here, which is a word I think every Indian is familiar with, satyagraha. So it's interesting to have that also. And maybe I'll end with being a Panglossian. Let's hope. Shashi, do you want to explain that?
Oh yeah, Panglossian is somebody who's totally optimistic. All is for the best in this best of all possible worlds. That means that nothing can go wrong. There are a lot of Panglossians, of course, in support of the present government's actions as well, and I don't mind. I mean, one would always like to be an optimist. So in my case, I define optimism as regarding the future with uncertainty. A pessimist says things are bound to go wrong, things are going to go to hell, it's terrible, etc. An optimist says, in my view, things just might go right, provided we do the right things. If we do this, we can get it to work. Our country can. I'm an optimist about India fundamentally, because I believe we have enough of the elements that if we handle them right, we can actually make our country everything that Chetan and you and I want India to be. And Mr. Modi says he wants India to be. But we're not doing those things. And unfortunately, we're doing a lot of the opposite things that divide, that set us back, that impede us, whether it's demonetization, whether it's communal bigotry, whether all the things, the forces and currents we're seeing up there that are pulling us back, when we could really be a successful, prosperous, and an India that works for all Indians,
Absolutely.
irrespective of caste or religion or region. And
think
that's really what I would love to see.
And
So
I think
yes,
that-
there is some ground for being Panglossian if we can do all the things right, but we still have to do them. It's not enough to just do the right thing. We have to do the thing right. And that's what I think India needs to wake up to.
I think the focus on doing the right thing is interesting. And Shashi, I'd recommend you send your book to each member of parliament, because it will be interesting to see some of these words come up in parliamentary debate as well. And Chetan, I think your point of communicating simply is, of course, something which is key for every politician.
And
So
very
Chetan, you've
simply
never thought of
again-
politics at all, because your message is clear and simple. You never thought of politics.
No, because Shashi is the perfect, I'm living vicariously through him. He's doing all the hard work, and it's too much work. I can't do it. And in terms of simple things, you know, to add to what Shashi said, right now we are heading towards being poor and proud. Don't be poor and proud. Be rich and humble. That's the nation we should be. Nobody respects poor countries. You know, you got to be rich and you got to be humble.
I'm happy to endorse that 100%, Chetan.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to have both of you.
Let's be rich and let's be humble. I actually said that 20 years ago to an Indian ambassador to the UN. I remember it was the time of the Iraq War. I said, if you want people to listen to you, just become rich. Why do we in India follow policies that keep us poor? And that's one of the reasons why, like you, I celebrated
And
the
that's when a
liberalization
Congress
of-
government was in power, Shashi.
Yeah, I said 20 years ago. I meant 30 years ago when the Iraq War of '91 was happening.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean the fact is that I was indeed at one time a critic of the. As I said, I have a
Right.
paper trail. I can't hide any of the things I believed and written. So I was a critic of the Congress. I became a fan after liberalization, after the opening up
Right.
of the economy, and as the Congress had disavowed its emergency legacy to become the best supporter of democracy. So I am very much a supporter of the post-91 Congress. But as a student of history, I'm also a huge fan of the historical Congress, especially epitomized by Nehru, Mahatma
Right.
Gandhi, those galaxy of leaders at that time. So there's a whole history there,
Absolutely.
including aberrations of things I don't agree with. Now, when I was an independent commentator, I could disagree more openly. But today,
Sure.
I don't think the Congress is
Well,
doing
as I
that
said,
much
but
that we
it's
need
nice.
to disagree.
today to have Shashi Tharoor and Chetan Bhagat, both, as I said, with very different perspectives, but wonderful to agree on core issues, I think, that all of us do as Indians. Thank you very much for being on this show. But I just want to ask before you go, Shashi, I don't know if you noticed the pun. Chetan, did you catch it? Why is this show called A Lit Storm? What's lit about it? A millennial told me this, so come on, Shashi.
Yeah. Well, the millennial use of lit is quite different from the old English approach that also suggests lit. So I think you guys got a very good pun. I mean, I think that Chetan and I are both lit, but at the same time, you wanted to talk about lit and words as well. So congratulations to NDTV for being totally woke.
Chetan, are you lit?
I'm very lit. I'm very into it, man. I'm very into it. I'm on Instagram.
Right.
So that's where you learn to be there. Instagram is very actionist. Twitter is where all the old people come and fight.
Absolutely. That's where we oldies are, at least I am. Thank you so much, Shashi and Chetan. It was wonderful to have you on this Lit Storm on NDTV.